That's a strange thing to hear from one of the greatest physicists who ever lived, because we tend to think the universe is anything but understandable, vast, chaotic, infinite, or maybe not infinite, filled with particles and forces we can barely wrap our heads around. And yet, the fact that we can explain anything at all, the fact that the laws of nature are so consistent and predictable, has led many people to ask a very old question: why is there something rather than nothing? And more specifically, does this whole thing need a creator? It's a question that's been asked in every culture, every era, every school of philosophy. It seems intuitive, doesn't it? Everything we see comes from something else. A chair is built by a carpenter, a painting is made by an artist. So surely the universe must have had a builder too. That's the first instinct, and for a long time, that was the final answer. The universe exists because a creator made it. But that answer doesn't hold up very well once we start asking follow-up questions, like, where did the creator come from? If everything needs a cause, then doesn't that apply to the creator too? And if we say the creator is eternal and uncaused, then why not just say the universe itself is eternal and uncaused? Why introduce a middleman at all? It's easy to take our everyday reasoning, our experience with human-made objects and events, and project it onto the cosmos. But the universe is not a man-made object. It's not a product that popped into being the way a factory builds a car. It's a radically different category of existence. And applying the same rules we use to explain household items doesn't get us very far. Now, let's slow down a little. There's a reason this question is so persistent. The idea of a creator offers a sense of comfort, direction, and most of all, closure. It's much easier to live with mystery if we can pin it to a higher power. We don't know what's going on, but someone does. That's the appeal, not necessarily the logic. But what does science actually say about the origins of the universe? Well, the honest answer is, we don't know everything. Not yet. But we know enough to sketch out a very different picture from the one painted by religion. The Big Bang Theory doesn't describe the beginning of existence from absolute nothingness. That's a common misunderstanding. It describes the expansion of space-time from a very hot, very dense state about 13.8 billion years ago. That's not the same as a magical act of creation. It's more like a transformation. A transition from one form of reality to another. And when physicists study the laws of quantum mechanics, things get even stranger. At the quantum level, particles can appear and disappear seemingly at random. They pop into existence from what's called a quantum vacuum, which isn't empty at all. It's a sea of fluctuating energy governed by rules that are deeply unintuitive. Some cosmologists suggest that even the universe itself could have originated through similar quantum processes. That doesn't mean we've solved the mystery, but it means the mystery isn't a blank check to insert a deity into the gaps. The gaps are shrinking, and they're being filled with testable models, not supernatural claims. There's also another problem with the creator idea that doesn't get talked about enough. Even if we granted the idea of a creator, that still tells us almost nothing. Is it one God or many? Is it conscious or unconscious? Is it a being at all or just a force? The word creator sounds simple, but it's just a label, not an explanation. And when people try to build out that label into a full theology, that's when things start to break down. Suddenly the creator cares what you eat, how you dress, who you sleep with, what you believe. But there's a huge gap between something caused the universe and that something wants you to pray 5 times a day and follow a specific rule book. That's not reasoning, that's a leap based on tradition, culture, and emotion, not evidence. And we have to be honest about where our beliefs come from. Most people don't believe in a creator because they studied cosmology or physics. They believe because they were raised in it, because their parents believed, or because their culture treats belief as a virtue in itself. It's inherited, not discovered. But the universe isn't shaped by what we're used to. It doesn't conform to our instincts or our traditions. It just is, whether we're comfortable with that or not. And maybe that's the real root of the question. Not does the universe need a creator, but can we emotionally handle a universe without one? A universe that isn't built for us, that doesn't have us in mind, that isn't part of a story with a beginning, middle, and end. It's not easy to accept that kind of reality. We're meaning-making creatures. We want the universe to have a plot, a narrator, a purpose. But wanting something to be true doesn't make it true. And here's where things get even more interesting, because the more we study the universe, the more we find that it operates according to rules, laws, patterns. And those rules don't point toward intention or design, they point toward structure, self-organization, cause and effect, from atoms to galaxies, from gravity to evolution. We see systems that build complexity from simplicity, not because someone planned it, but because that's how the physics works. That's how energy and matter behave under certain conditions. And that brings us to a quiet but powerful realization. Maybe the universe doesn't need a creator, because creation isn't a moment. It's a process, one that unfolds naturally, slowly, inevitably, without supervision. That's hard to digest, especially when we've spent thousands of years imagining gods behind every bolt of lightning, every illness, every sunrise. But with each step forward in our understanding, the need for those gods has faded, not because we hate the idea, but because we no longer need it to explain the world. We used to think the stars were holes in the sky. Then we found out they were suns. We used to think disease was punishment from above. Now we understand germs and immune systems. Every time we replaced mystery with knowledge, the need for a creator became a little less urgent. Not because knowledge makes life cold or empty, but because it makes life clearer. It shows us that the universe doesn't care about our myths. It runs on its own rules, indifferent to our stories, but open to our investigation. And when we stop insisting that there must be a creator, we start seeing reality for what it is, not what we wish it was. Now, some people push back by saying, even if science explains how the universe works, it can't explain why it exists at all. They argue that something must have chosen to make it, that without a mind behind it all, existence itself makes no sense. But there's a hidden assumption in that line of thinking. It assumes that existence has to have a reason in the first place, that the universe owes us a justification. But maybe that's just a projection of human psychology, not a feature of reality. We ask why because we live in a world of intention. When we see smoke, we look for a fire. When we see footprints, we look for the person who made them. Our brains evolved to find causes, to detect agency, to explain what we see in terms of who did it and why. That's useful for survival, but not always for truth. When it comes to the universe itself, asking why might be the wrong kind of question. It's like asking what the color blue smells like. We're applying the wrong frame of reference. The universe doesn't necessarily have a why, it just is. And that can sound cold or meaningless unless you shift your perspective, because there's something beautiful, even profound, about a universe that just is. A universe that doesn't require permission to exist. A universe that isn't the product of a mind, but the unfolding of natural laws. Not invented, not commanded, just real. It's tempting to think that without a creator, everything is random. But that's not the case either. The laws of physics are not random. They are incredibly precise, consistent, mathematically elegant. But they're not laws written by someone, they're descriptions of how things behave. They don't require a lawgiver, only a reality to observe. And this leads to another misconception, that the fine-tuning of the universe, the apparent precision of certain constants proves it was designed. You'll hear arguments that say, if gravity were just slightly weaker or stronger, life couldn't exist, so it must have been fine-tuned by a designer. But this argument confuses two things: life as we know it, and the universe as a whole. Yes, our form of life depends on certain conditions, but that doesn't mean the universe was made for us. It could just as easily mean we exist because those are the conditions that happen to occur. We fit the universe, not the other way around. This is called the anthropic principle, and while it doesn't answer every question, it does shift the burden of proof. We don't need to assume a designer every time the numbers line up just right. Sometimes things align because, as where they can align, life arises in the places it can arise, and not in the places it can't. We don't marvel that puddles fit their holes perfectly, because we understand that puddles take the shape of the hole, not the other way around. So maybe we're the puddle shaped by the universe, not shaping it. There's also the possibility, still theoretical, that there are many universes, each with different laws and constants, a multiverse. We don't know if that's true, but it's worth noting that if multiple universes exist, we'd only find ourselves in the one where conditions allow for our existence. Again, not because it was designed for us, but because we couldn't exist in the ones where it wasn't. Of course, none of this proves there isn't a creator, but that's not the point. The point is, we don't need to assume one. The evidence doesn't require it. The reasoning doesn't demand it, and the mystery isn't solved by adding another mystery. Saying God did it is not an explanation, it's a conversation stopper. It doesn't tell us how things work, it just tells us to stop asking. But that's never been a good reason to believe something. In science, mystery is an invitation to explore, not a reason to surrender. And here's another thing to consider. If a creator made the universe, then that creator is responsible for everything in it, not just the sunsets and puppies and good music, but also cancer, parasites, earthquakes, extinction, and unimaginable suffering. You can't credit a creator with the beauty of the cosmos and then shrug off the horror. You either own all of it or none of it. And that raises an uncomfortable question. If the creator is loving and good, why is the universe so indifferent to suffering? Why are the laws of nature so brutal? Why does evolution work through death and competition rather than compassion or cooperation? Some believers answer this by saying we can't understand the Creator's plan. But again, that's not an explanation. That's a way to excuse the lack of one. And the moment we say that suffering is part of some mysterious divine plan, we lose our ability to question it, to resist it, to fix it. If we treat the universe as a moral act of will, then everything in it must have moral significance. But that creates a mess of contradictions. A truly designed universe would not look like this. It would not waste 99.999% of its time and space on emptiness and death just to put humans on a speck of dust. The more we learn about the cosmos, the less human-centered it appears. That's not a problem to solve, that's a fact to absorb. And maybe the real breakthrough, the real moment of growth, is learning to live without the need for a cosmic parent, without the comforting illusion of purpose written into the stars. Because what we find when we let go of that need is freedom. We're not bound by someone else's script. We are not characters in a divine drama. We are agents of our own meaning. And that's a much more empowering idea than being designed. There's nothing small or hopeless about a universe without a creator. There's something deeply honest about it, deeply human. It invites us to stop pretending and start engaging with what is, not what we hope for, not what we fear, but what's right in front of us. And the more we do that, the more wonder we find, not in myths, but in reality itself. The idea that the universe doesn't need a creator isn't just a rejection of old answers. It's an invitation to embrace better questions. Questions that don't start with assumptions, but with curiosity. Questions that don't end in dogma, but in discovery. And when we look at how far we've come, from believing we were the center of everything, to realizing we're a small part of something unimaginably vast, we see that every leap forward has come from letting go, not holding on, letting go of fixed beliefs, letting go of easy answers, letting go of the idea that we are special by default. And in that letting go, we don't lose wonder, we find it. It's not less awe-inspiring to say the stars formed through gravity and nuclear fusion. It's more awe-inspiring because it's true, because we can understand it, because it connects us to the fabric of reality instead of separating us from it. And this understanding doesn't just come from telescopes and equations. It comes from the courage to face uncertainty, to admit what we don't know, and to keep going anyway. There's a strange kind of humility in that, and a strange kind of strength. We don't have to pretend the universe has us in mind to find value in being alive. We don't need to be created to matter. We matter because we're here, briefly and probably, astonishingly. We matter because we can ask these questions, because we care about the answers. And maybe that's the most extraordinary thing of all. Not that the universe was created for us, but that we can look into its depths and reflect on what it means, with no script, no divine permission, just the raw, unfiltered light of reality. There's a quote often misattributed but still worth repeating. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you, and it isn't, but that doesn't mean we stop trying. It means we take that mystery seriously, not by filling it with fantasy, but by stepping into it with open eyes. Because the real universe, the one revealed by science, by reason, by honest observation, is more than enough. Doesn't need a creator. It just needs us to stop asking for one and start listening to what it's actually telling us. It's telling us we are not the center. It's telling us we are temporary. It's telling us we are small, but also that we are capable of understanding something as immense, as intricate, and as majestic as everything. And that's a truth no creation story can compete with. So maybe the question isn't, does the universe need a creator? Maybe the real question is, why do we need there to be one? What is it we're afraid of exactly? That the universe might just be indifferent? That we might not be the reason for any of this? But why should indifference scare us? Why should a universe without an owner make our lives less meaningful? We don't need someone watching us to be kind. We don't need someone judging us to live with purpose. And we don't need to be created to create. Meaning doesn't have to be handed down. It can be built from the ground up, from our relationships, from our questions, from our willingness to care despite the silence. The silence of the universe isn't cold. It's just honest. And maybe honesty is enough. We don't need a voice from above to tell us what's right or what's true or what's worth doing with our time here. We just need to listen, not for answers, but for the kind of clarity that comes from letting go of illusions. Because when we stop looking for something behind the curtain, we finally see the stage. Not a performance, not a design, just reality as it is. And that, in all its chaos and beauty, is more than enough. Let that be the closing breath, a pause, a quiet echo. And if someone still insists that the universe needs a creator, maybe the simplest response is just this: why